groups like La Ribea, they're also diversifying the lineup. These are locals who are from Rockaway, and their group, like the youth that they bring to the water are from Rockaway. And this is like a new populace that we see in the lineup, but they've always been locals, And so I think there's just a greater awareness of access to the water and for everybody. And I think that really just enriches our community. I wanted to read this quote that you were quoted on, Johnny, in the Surfer magazine, because I think it's really beautiful. And it's this idea of, like the queerifying of surf culture, meaning, there's a creativity, there's this expansion, this, kind of liberation. And I think when you think about, surfing as an activity, as a pursuit, there is this freedom, right? Like a freedom of body movement and the shapes that we embody with our bodies and on the board, or like even when we get tossed off, right? And there's just this kind of musicality I find, and poetry that I feel like mainstream surf culture, there's such a rigidity and, it's gone so far from its kind of counterculture roots, that I feel like it's really beautiful when we have this kind of queerifying of, or talking about it in that lens. It just kind of brings it back to its, like the heart and soul of what surfing is and what being in the water is like, right? So your quote here is, I was watching a Morgan Masson video of Travers Adler surfing, and in the video he's shredding, but he's also flailing around in this really interesting way. Remembers Cappetta, that's you.
Such a unique style.
Yeah. It looks so different. And this is, of course, they're asking you about your childhood, right, of watching surf. It looks so different from anything I'd ever seen in surfing. And seeing that made me realize that if you feel different, you can surf different. So when I came back to California after uncovering my gender dysphoria, surfing was a huge part of letting me actualize that. I was unemployed and living at home and surfing in the middle of the day with nobody out, just trying to see if I could surf like I felt for the first time. With each session, Cappetta tried to unlearn whatever definition of good surfing that absorbed through surf culture, instead focusing on what felt good, what was a true expression of the self. It makes it closer to art, right? They ask rhetorically. It was satisfying that Cappetta found themselves sometimes surfing for 6 hours straight, even in meager conditions. And what I love about this quote is this kind of, like you said, you stepped away from surfing, hoping to kind of discover yourself anew in New York City in ways that, you're stretching beyond your San Diego childhood in the water, playing in the water and surfing. And then kind of coming back to it with new eyes, under a new lens of seeing surfing in that creative, like kind of bridging it together. I was wondering if you could speak more on that, because I love that. Maybe I think people should go and read this article, because I didn't really introduce that quote well, but it's so beautiful in what you're saying, and maybe you could expand upon that more.
Yeah, I think there's, for like young people in San Diego or in any probably like surfing culture community, like there's a lot of pressure to rip. Mm-hmm. That's how you get waves, right? Is like you take off deeper and you shred harder. And so you find yourself really focused on like, you're thinking in terms of maneuvers and you're thinking in terms of these sort of like discrete like markers of shreddery. Mm-hmm. And what that means basically is that you're like trying your hardest to be macho on the wave, throw buckets of spray, like punt big airs. Like it's all like really like hyperbolic. And there's a whole language thing around it too, that I think about, that I won't get in. I don't have to get into.
Shred the gnar,
shred the gnar, hack, rip. Like it's all this like super
macerate.
Like exactly
very violent. Exactly. Very violent, isn't it?
It's super violent. And I really think that surfing developed around the vocabulary that came out of the 80s. That they kind of came up with these words that were like what they wanted to surf like, and then people started surfing to the words. But I guess I was also riding this egg. And it was like, this was before eggs were like eggs are super cool now. Everyone's got eggs, but this was like, it's got.
I blame Devin Howard for that,
quote unquote, China. But yeah, fellow Encinitas person. Yeah, we're ruining it for everybody. But yeah, I was riding this weird board that like isn't cool. And I mean, I don't know. I guess where do I start with this? It was just this like, it was really an experiment. It was like, can I make surfing feel good for me? I didn't feel like I competed when I was in high school. Like I didn't feel like I needed to, I wasn't interested really in ripping anymore. It wasn't giving me that much joy. And I wanted to see if I could do something that came from like within. Bridge like the self with the act. And I think also a little transgressively, or a little like I had this sneaking suspicion that surfing and dancing are really similar. This kind of this choreography, and you're in surfing, you're reacting to the wave rather than the architecture, rather than the literal rhythm of the music. But there's that kind of momentum, that flow. And I was sort of interested in seeing, I also like always wished that I was a dancer, but I was like always too scared to, because it was feminine, and that was, there was not space for that in my household really. So it was kind of my way of also like reclaiming that desire to like move my body in a way that I knew to be not what was expected of me.
I would have to say, like, it seems like to me like you've advanced your surfing by 10 years, probably. You're where a lot of people are when they're in their 30s in surfing in some ways, where you start to realize, well, one is like physically your body can't shred and lacerate like you used to, and you start to deal with the realities of your physical limitations. And so you start to look for these feelings and different things and riding different boards, because you then realize I'm in love with surfing for the feeling, not for the perception of what I am in the water. And, and I would say, so it's a very advanced and very mature perspective on surfing that many of us, as we get older, we start to discover because we're forced to, because of our body, but you have transcended that because of you're mentally wanted to do that. And I think that's incredible. And it's a really good, that's how we should all be looking at surfing. And if you go back like in the 70s and you read like Drew Campion's descriptions of surfing, it's all a dance. And they talk about the wave as your partner in many ways, and you are reacting to it. And I think that's, I don't know if you've ever seen the Michael House band, the video of Steph Gilmore and Michael House band they did in 2011 for the Quicksilver Pro and the dance. It was just one of the best freaking series. And it was just this wonderful parallel of dancing and surfing. And surfing is a dance. And I think it's more that. I would argue the shred tear also coincides with the rise of professional surfing and the need to quantify surfing, quantify maneuvers, all that sort of stuff that has, and in the 80s it boomed, with the OP Pro and everything. And so this surf kind of aggression started to show, and, and it wasn't always like that. And it wasn't always what surfing was about. And I think there's always been people like Andrew Kidman and Derek Hind also who have realize surfing is the dance and not a competitive sport.
Yeah, I love the correlation with dance, because there is a fluidity, right? And there is a feeling and improvisation with those feelings into rhythm and things that kind of come at you with your partner or whatever it is. And I mean, I remember I was in Brazil before the whole Brazil invasion of in the
Brazilian
CT.
storm. Okay.
Yeah, the Brazilian storm. And I remember I was in this part of Brazil where the water was so choppy, and I just thought, what can you surf in this? And it was just, you'd see surfers go out, and I could not believe my eyes. I had never seen surfing like this. And seriously, this is before anyone was on tour from Brazil. And I just thought they're doing samba on the waves. There was no forward, there was no backwards, there was no up or down. Whatever the water was giving them, they just went with it, and they just made it beautiful. And it really stirred my my emotions, because it was so beautiful. And to see this fluidity and this not like surfing in a way I'd never seen before. I thought, where's the line? Where's it even breaking? Where's the peak? And it was just whatever the water gave them, they made it up in the air, in the water, forwards, backwards,
I got a couple questions I want to ask. Like, do you surf often at all outside of Rockaway? And how do you feel when you do go surf other places around Long Island? I'm kind of curious, like what your experiences are like. Any one of you can take it. Momo, you've been quiet, so like, come on, step up here. You're like a Robert Moses person too. So I mean, technically.
Yeah, well, actually, because of that, like, I have learned so much this summer through Johnny and just like being in the water so much, but I like don't know that much about surf history, and like Johnny's been sending me links and references, and like I'm like,
get yourself an Encyclopedia of Surfing subscription. It's $3 a month or $30 a year. You will have endless entertainment, and it's so fascinating. And Matt is one of the most sensitive and sensible surf writers, and he has an unvarnished look at surf history, which is great because he criticizes it, and he doesn't put certain people on a pedestal that probably shouldn't be. And he's very, very real. So just a little ad there for Matt.
Well, yes. Yeah.
Sorry. Go on.
No,
sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So that's why I didn't contribute that much before. But I don't know. My surf experience was just like so weird because it was just with my dad and brother. And then like a bunch of these like white Long Island guys. So like I was just like, I also was terrified of the water growing up and the ocean, like swimming and the ocean. But like, yeah. So majorly like negative experience overall, but because of that I didn't have like time to think about like that dude over there or whatever. I was just like, I'm in the ocean, there's no one that looks like me. My dad's over there on a boogie board and my brother, who's 5 years younger, is like ripping. So I'm like at the tail end, like down way so far away from the peak. And yeah, that's like, that was my surf experience until I started working at locals and got so much more comfortable in the ocean.
What was it like for both of you once you put the call out for Benny's Club and the folks who arrived and the new friends you made? Like, what was that like for you to see, to basically begin to build community and to create what you wanted to see out in the world for yourself,
Oh my God. I was just cheesing for like, I've been cheesing for like months. Like my boss at work is so upset because I'm like, I like can't focus. I'm like freaking out about Benny's like all the time. Yeah, it's amazing. It's community. It's people. The vibes are so open. And like, I mean, Tyler, you were out the session with La Rubeo was like, I mean, so it was fun. Like once in a like, I think that lineup will never like, that was once in a lifetime. It was like,
really happens to me all the time. Everyone laughing, having a good time around me. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, it was super special. It was amazing. Like
it was packed. It was packed, and every single person there was like there to have fun and do nothing else, and to be there with their friends. And like we had like a little sunrise session this morning, and there were 6 or 7 of us, and it was like just like, I don't know, we've all got our surf friends, and like they're mostly straight and they're mostly white and they're great and we love them, but also to paddle out and have your surf friends like also like feel like you and look like you and talk like you and like speak your language is really, really special. So I've just been on a fucking cloud since August 30th.
I also have been loving the intersection of like, my queer friends and then the water, because, when I was younger, I would connect with my queer friends at bars and clubs, and now it's like in the water. And so it's really
a lot healthier.
Yeah. It's a really beautiful way to connect with anyone, but especially like, your community and your dear friends who are near and dear. And to be able to not have to explain things and just